So I wanted to go in as Kuya because, my parents growing up said never call an adult by their first name. That's just messed up. It's like disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I know specifically in the level of institution that I was working in, a lot of, especially white adults, just call me by my first name or call me Mr. and Miss. I'm like, that's too professional. I feel like that level of communication already sets a barrier. And it's not objectively wrong. It's just all cultural for me. Let me do something that feels more familial. And I'm so happy that on my very first day of work in 2019, I got on the mic. And that's what I led with. My name's this. In my head, you're never going to hear that name again. Everyone just call me Kuya. Everyone repeat after me. Say Kuya. And it's been my name there for 6 years. And it's crazy because some students would be asking for a letter of rec, and I get a reference and it'd be like Kuya Velasquez. Yo, that's not, yo, I'll write this for you. Yo, that's not my name though. You know what I mean? So it now also leaving the school, we have Kuyas everywhere. And I'm so happy that for many of them, I got to be their first Kuya. Being an educator is always beyond yourself because you're not always going to be that place forever. I tried my best to leave everything I got when I transitioned out. And you just got to have hope that there's other educators who are as seasoned who bring some things that I can't bring.
Yeah.
And you got to open up just to having an abundance of Kuyas and ates, that's what we call older sisters as well.
No, that's cool. I feel like I got a Kuya there. I'll call him OG though. Yanni Powell, who runs the Other and Belonging Institute out of Berkeley, is my OG. So when I landed in the Bay Area, he was my Kuya. And at that time, othering and belonging really was popping up in a major way where people started to talk more and call it out belonging, calling out othering, and then really understanding, oh shoot, we all have a place. And that's what I'm hearing. What your work has been there, you being that safe space and people knowing that they have a space at the Cal Berkeley. You called out BSU. So, oh shoot, yeah, I spoke there too. This is real dope. I don't even understand how we didn't, cross paths. I really appreciate you, 1, playing that role, 2, calling it out, 3, really being able to go back to an institution where you were first othered. To make sure that the future folks would not be othered in the same way, that they found their place, they knew that they belonged. And it sounds like you creating that course also probably educated your peers, right? The other teachers who were there so that they wouldn't see just a you in that class. Right. They would understand okay, we have to do a little bit more. So again, tipping my hat to you for taking that, chance and stance to be a bridge for others and a connector. So, man, I appreciate that.
I mean, I can imagine that there are a lot of people who feel the same way in their own spaces in schools, right? I feel like that's one of the first indications or experiences, if we think about how we've been othered, is when you go to school, right? What kicks do you have on that day? Do you have the newest hat or the newest jersey? A lot of us, maybe our listeners too, can remember growing up at some point outside of the home feeling othered. And today, I'm Gen Z, so I'm going to talk a little bit about TikTok for a second. If you're on TikTok, you've probably seen educators and teachers, documenting their experiences, and they're young and they're hip and they're calling out pop culture phrases in the classroom to get attention. And that's so beautiful for me to see because you're relating to students, you're using language that they know, you're gaining trust and also being seen by someone who's supposed to be like your superior, but you also feel that you can come to them and have conversations with them. And so I was geeked out to know that you were going to be here with us because when I think about the TikTok teachers that are cool doing their lessons and making jokes with the little kids, that's you creating that space of belonging. And so I wanted to know, you kind of touched on it, talking about students calling you Kuya. How would you then describe your teaching style or your community building style to make it more inclusive and belonging for others?
No, absolutely. Thank you for both of those. And it's dope you actually bring up othering belonging because I started that book a while back.
Oh,
and it just fundamentally for me, I don't even know if this is correct, but I think one of the main takeaways at the beginning was that just because there's a difference in a space doesn't need to mean othering happens. Othering is this active thing. It's not just a given that there will be different levels of power when you bring Black, brown, white people into a space. We've created systems so that someone will perpetuate that. But when I took a moment to be like, you're right. Anytime I go into a space and there's just difference, I just assume there has to be a power imbalance. And that's just such a powerful take. And I think for a lot of people, they could probably disagree. They could probably what do you mean? But it's a beautiful thing to know that to some point we have agency, you know, to understand like just because maybe I might be the only guy in the room, or like I don't need to tap into like this internal sense of patriarchy, right? But it could be easy to do so. Like that's how I know men like have power. But kind of bridging these pieces, as Bobbie mentioned, I recently just got my master's in counseling with the purpose of actually wanting to shift my role as long as I stay in education. Like this role that I did in the center was like all these programs. I was like leading retreats, leading events, a bunch of things that you'll get students engaged. But the reason I came back was that I was really hoping to do something that's rooted in social and emotional wellness and support, that one-on-one, maybe group counseling. And because I didn't have a counselor at the time, I was like, I think counseling is what I should be doing. So I'm combining what I understand as my counseling practice with how I teach my pedagogy. And it's student-centered. I don't think that's new for great teachers. What does that look like? It's being able to really bite your tongue as an educator to know that you may have an answer for something or maybe a political stance on something. And when you're in a classroom, whether it's your group counseling or you're in a space, you gotta let the kids cook. You'd be like, yo, Kuya, what do you think about this? And you just gotta say, well, what do you guys think? You know what I mean? It's because you also have to understand you have so much persuasion as an adult. Like kids developmentally, they're just like, what he says goes. Like, I love him, I have good rapport. I'm not even gonna think harder or deeper because if he's lived like this amount of life, like he's gone to school, like he knows, right? So student-centered, how else do I build rapport? I love music. I love music to like death. Every class, so I teach ethnic studies as well. I don't have a teaching credential. The way I've learned how to teach was just being a student in different ethnic studies spaces, not obviously being a student in school, but I have facilitated a lot of workshops around DEI and identity and belonging. When I just think about how I facilitate that, I'm like, this is how I facilitate my classroom. I always got music playing when kids come in. I ask students like early on, I'm like, yo, what do you listen to? And between my breaks or different moments in class where I have students working by themselves, I'll throw a song that a student suggested me, like they don't even remember they suggested, and I'll just look at them like, and they're like, oh yeah. And it's just like those things to make a student feel like, damn, I shared something and it's put into practice. And it's those moments that I think opens up, a student's world in order to participate more, to take risks, to be like, yo, my voice actually matters in here. And I don't got to fight for it right off the bat. Someone's inviting me to the table. And now this class of 16 is listening to this track that I'm embarrassed to I have my headphones on. I don't want anyone to listen to it. And other rituals too. I always have a centerpiece in the middle of my classroom. Usually it's the book that we're reading. I start class in a circle all the time, really indigenous practices too, because we have to see each other. I treat every class like it could be the last class. So we have to model, that we come first before the work. And luckily I have that flexibility with my class, but we might not have time to do like a 20-minute check-in, like with a rosebud and thorn all the time, but you have to fight to structure in like being able to see your students and for them to see each other. And where the counseling lens comes in, bringing in what Bobbie was mentioning, is so much of the work I think of great teaching is sensibility. Like I'm using all these words right now, but when you walk into class and you just feel like you can feel that your students collectively lightens up. You may have you have a lesson plan, you have an agenda, it's really strict. You just got to be willing to let that go. Be like, yo, before I start this lesson, you all look stressed. And because there's like real shit going on in the world. We have genocide in Gaza happening every day with people trying to bring it to like light for people to know, and people who are shutting it down. We have people who say, it doesn't affect me here, it affects me here. You have all those things. All these things also as a teacher, you can have imposter syndrome. Damn, I don't even know enough about this topic to talk about it. But when you put on your counselor lens, it's like, you don't need to be an expert to facilitate conversation. You don't need to know the content. Kids know what they want to talk about. So how do you just make space for them to, participate in dialogue? I think those fundamental pieces are accessible by like almost all teachers, no matter what the subject is, to be able to start a class like that, to ease in, especially in a school where grind culture and hustle culture and perfection and performance could be like a priority.
Yeah, and it brings up a couple of things that you said, makes me think of two instances, but one of the biggest things that I'm hearing from you is you've incorporated your lived experience. Because even as you talk about counseling and getting your master's in counseling, it takes me back to you being in school and who you found to help you get through those moments. It's also your lived experience. I remember, and for my hip hop fans out there as well, one of the biggest moments when I started to get into music management, I was actually at a show at the House of Blues many years ago. It was so old that Outkast was opening up for the Roots and Common and everybody else. And I remember seeing Black Thought standing next to me, right? Like Black Thought, the MC for the Roots. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing here? And he was like, I need to understand how all of y'all are receiving what's happening on stage. So you being able to come in and know, let me figure out what your music tastes are, right? That you might incorporate later. It was the same thing that I was hearing from this hip hop giant, especially at that point. Man, you here with us. Right. You caring more about me now. I became a bigger fan in that moment. So I love that, again, you're taking that in.